will not be able to attend today. And member Holness, I understand member Holness to be requesting, I don't know if that had come through, to join the meeting virtually. I don't know if that came through, but I know that she had asked somebody from her office to make the inquiry. I'm not sure if they were successful in making the inquiry.
I didn't receive, and neither did the clerk, and we didn't make any Zoom arrangements for that.
And also, member Williams, Donovan Williams, he will be late as only today he recognized that he was supposed to be elsewhere in a next court, as you would like to say it.
Okay.
And so as soon as that matter is completed, he will be here.
Okay, thank you.
And member Charles and Wilson are on the way here. So they are going to be a little bit late.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, member Sibley. All right, members, I'm going to take the minutes. You didn't get the circulated copies, no? You can just ensure that the members, I know they would have been sent electronically, but the members just want the hard copies.
Chair.
Yes, member Sibley.
Also, I noted that there were some documents that were sent yesterday. I wasn't able to.
I think that they're not new documents, though. These is the same set that we got, that we got from last week, but they were resent electronically. But it's the same set of documents, though.
Okay, I was not able to open it, so I don't know what document they were. So that's why I'm just bringing it to your attention. With regards to the appropriation accounts, were they, for the various periods, were they circulated?
Yeah, man. They were sent last week, and I think they were resent again yesterday in the email. But we got them last week here,
Very well. I'll look through my file.
Yeah, man, they came last week. In fact, I think they were sent twice electronically. But there are copies here.
I came in late last week, so it might have been.
But we have copies here which we can provide to members.
Please and thanks.
Okay. Member Henriquez, you told me you had dutifully gone through the minutes, and you picked up any major corrections, omissions, anything of that nature. So could you move for confirmation?
No, Chairman.
Oh, hold on. Okay.
There are some corrections.
You have some corrections? Okay.
In terms of attendance. Yes, there. I can't recall seeing Mrs. Blake last week. She might have been here, but I don't know if she was.
Yeah, man. Mrs. Blake was here.
Mr. Owen Whiteley, he was not here.
Owen Whiteley, where's that?
From the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but I know Miss Blake was here.
All right.
She was sitting further down, but I saw her. I don't think we introduced her. She was in our usual spot, and I think I neglected to ask them to introduce themselves. But
It's not often that I agree with my colleague member, but I must say Mr. Whiteley was not here last week.
I wouldn't disagree, 'cause I don't know Mr. Whiteley, but I know Miss Blake was here. All right, so we can correct that. Mr. Whiteley wasn't here, but certainly Miss Blake. Anything else, Member Guy? No? Okay, so Member Henriquez moves for the confirmation, seconded by Member Miller. Thank you. Are there any matters arising from the minutes, members? All right, if there are no matters arising.
Chair.
Yes, Member Sibley.
Only that the PS the Minister of Labor and Social Security was to send us some documents. That's all I can recall arising out of.
Yeah, there were some documents to be sent. I'm going to ask the clerk to follow up. We haven't received them as yet, but I will ensure that we follow up before our next meeting next week. Welcome, Member Charles. An apology for lateness was given on your behalf. Members, today we're going to be examining the Ministry of Finance internal audit of the Auditor General's Department, plus 3 sets of appropriation accounts for the Auditor General. So I'm going to ask you to invite in the Auditor General's team. I believe it is the first time that the Auditor General would be appearing before the PAC in this capacity.
Chair, just to indicate, which is no fault of the administration here, that I had not gotten a chance to look through the appropriation account, so I may not be able to ask a question this week with regards to that. Thank you.
Okay, sir. You can invite them in, please, yes. Madam Auditor General, welcome. I'm told this is the first time you're sitting in this chair. Wait, where's your mic? There's no mic? Hold on, we have to sort that out. All right, we're sorting out the microphone, but could I, Mr. Dillon, Chief Internal Auditor at Ministry of Finance, welcome. Could I ask you to just introduce yourself and the team that is here from the Ministry of Finance with you?
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Richard Dillon. I'm the Chief Internal Auditor for the Ministry of Finance.
You're going to have to talk up a bit more, right?
Okay.
It's on, but you just have to project. Yeah.
My name is Richard Dillon, Chief Internal Auditor for the Ministry of Finance. I've been serving in this capacity for about 9 years, and I've also had the opportunity to serve in about 2 other ministries in a similar capacity. And my team today consists of Mrs. Collier Murray to my left, who is one of the audit managers in the unit, and behind me is Mr. Garfield Clark, who is a senior auditor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Blake, you want to introduce yourself and the team, the other members from Finance?
Okay. Hope Blake, Deputy Financial Secretary, and beside me is Sasha Lawrence Rose, Acting Head of the Internal Audit Directorate.
AG, you can speak from that mic. Test it and let me see if we can hear you.
Testing, testing. Are you hearing me clearly?
It's really not ideal for you to be stretching over that way.
What was that?
We can't get the other mic. All right, I'm being told we can't get the mic, which is normally put there, so we may have to ask you if you could occupy the row.
Here?
Yes, instead,
Okay.
so that you don't have to be straining. And I apologize for that on behalf of the Parliament. But I think there's another committee. I think we're juggling a number of committees at the same time.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
One second, AG. All right, go ahead, Madam Auditor General. Introduce yourself and the team that is here from your department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Pamela Monroe Ellis, Auditor General. I have with me this morning, to my right, Mr. Owen McKnight, Director. Okay, fine. So with me is Mr. Owen McKnight, Director Corporate Services, Mrs. Carolyn Lewis, Deputy Auditor General, Mr. Marlon McAdam, Deputy Auditor General, Mrs. Gail Lulim, Deputy Auditor General, Iselin Cooper, Principal Auditor, Christopher Hare, Principal Auditor. And those that have named, Mr. Chairman, they constitute our Executive Management Committee. We're also accompanied by Gervais McLeod, Senior Director, Human Resource Management, Siran Mitchell Bent, Corporate Planner, and Georgia Gale, Director, Finance and Accounts, who should be joining us virtually.
How is she joining us?
And Shamar Richards, Internal Auditor.
How is she joining virtually? All right, I'm going to, there is a member from the Auditor General joining by Zoom. I'm going to find out who made the arrangement with the link to see if we can facilitate the other members who are not physically here. 1 second, members, just let me try and sort that out. Our members, we're going to proceed. We were connected. There seem to be some technical problems. We're going to share the link with the other members who are not here, but I'm hoping that we can get back with those. The representative, Ms. Gale from the Auditor General's Department, who was joined remotely. And then we can share the link with the other members. You have the link? Who would have the link? You're going to email it? Okay, so it's going to be emailed. So, Mr. Sibley's, you may want to alert members Holness and Morrison to just look out for it, and then they can join if they so desire. Mr. Dillon, I'm going to invite you first to take us through your report of 2019. And I know there's a response from the Auditor General's Department, but I'll start with you.
The Internal Audit Unit of the Ministry of Finance conducted an audit of the operational activities of the Auditor General's Department. The audit was conducted over the period July 1, 2019 to September 2019. And the period that was reviewed was April 2016 to March 2019. So that covered 3 financial years. 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, 2018, and 2019. The main objective...
Just for my purposes, would this be the first time that the ministry would be doing an internal audit of the Auditor General's Department?
It would not be the first. We actually audit the department annually. The primary focus, though, would be the audit of the appropriation account. But we have done audit of this nature prior to now. All right, so the main objective of this audit was to determine compliance with relevant laws and regulations, circulars, and other government guidelines in respect of procurement and payroll, human resources, and information technology. The audit focused on these areas primarily: human resource, procurement, inventory management, expenditure control, and cash and bank management, and business continuity. Our audit is executed based on the authority of the FA Act, and specifically the audit of the Auditor General's Department is based on Section 122 of the Constitution. Right, so, Chairman, would you want me to go through the audit process, our audit process?
I think it would be helpful just to go through the process, and then I'm going to invite the Auditor General to respond. There is the findings, there is a management response, and this audit would have been done in 2019, so we'd want to find out where things are subsequent to the completion of this audit. But you can take us through the process, yes.
All right, so as per our protocol, which is consistent with the internal audit manual that is promulgated by the Ministry of Finance, we start our financial year by doing a risk assessment, and that process entails us looking at our audit universe, and we conduct a risk assessment to determine the level of risks that are associated with the auditable entities that falls under our scope. Now, the Auditor General Department itself, we treat it as a mandatory audit. So each year, regardless of what the risk assessment says, we audit that particular area. And as a matter of background, the internal audit unit also audit other entities outside of the ministry and the Auditor General. We also audit the Houses of Parliament. Up to a year and a half ago, King's House, offices of the Services Commission, and we give support to other entities depending on the particular situation. So we do a kind of shared service system. So whenever the audit plan is completed, and that process involves it being submitted to the audit committee and the financial secretary for their review and comment and ultimate approval by the audit committee. When we are actually going to do the audit, and in this case the Auditor General, we would have submitted an engagement letter where we indicate our intention to begin the audit. It is sent to the accounting officer, who in this case will be the Auditor General, and following the issuance of that engagement letter, we conduct an entrance meeting. At the entrance meeting, we discuss all the relevant matters associated with the audit, which include the scope, the methodology, the expectation of the auditors and the client, Auditor General, and any other issue that is pertinent to the engagement is discussed. What we also communicate to the client is our methodology. And I mean, at that point, they have the opportunity to seek clarity and raise any suggestions or concerns with respect to our approach. Now, after the entrance meeting is done, we would execute the field work, and this is where we actually do the audit. And upon completion of that field work, a draft report is produced, and the draft report would contain our draft finding. It is submitted to the client for them to review and you know, understand the issues that were identified in a draft format. We have an exit meeting where we discuss the findings in the draft report. The client has the opportunity to give explanations for the issues if they are in a position to do so at that time. And they also have the opportunity to seek clarity on any matter that requires clarity. So it is really an opportunity for us to conclude the audit as in terms of us having a discussion and ironing out any matter that requires such action. So subsequent to the exit meeting, the client again is required to give formal responses. So in the exit, they might give preliminary responses, but at the end of that process, they are required to submit written, formal responses. And these processes would have been communicated to them from the entrance meeting. When we receive those final responses, we use those to complete the audit report. So the draft would have included our findings, and we utilize the management responses to finalize the report. And upon finalization, it is submitted to the client. I don't know if we'll get into this, but I believe there might be some administrative issues to be discussed as it relates to tabling these particular reports. Oh, and you know, what are the actual protocol that should be followed? I know the Auditor General would have established protocols because of her function of reporting to Parliament, but there are some clarity as it relates to the tabling of these reports, all right? So
You're saying you need some clarity in terms of how you should proceed with it?
Yeah, my question is it the process that we followed in terms of reporting to Parliament, is it correct?
I would have to, let me speak to the committee clerk and then I can get back to you on that matter.
All right.
All right, can we go into the substantive matters?
Chairman, Chairman, I need some clarification on the last part the auditor made. What is it that he needs to know?
All right, so currently what we do is to table the reports, the appropriation accounts, and the actual reports. The confirmation that I want to get is that the manner in which it was tabled, was it correct?
All right, member guy, let me try and get some clarity. Madam AG, you can provide some clarity on this? Okay.
Not sure I can provide clarity, but just to probably just add to what Mr. Dillon is saying. What would have happened in this situation, as he correctly outlined, an exit interview was held, a draft report was presented, and we were asked to provide our preliminary responses, which we did. The expectation is that when we provide our preliminary responses, the auditor would assess those responses to say whether he finds them acceptable or not, whether he's going to accept and amend his report or refute. In this case, he did not get back to us, and the report was tabled, was actually sent to the minister.
Can we just ask you to mute the persons joining via Zoom until we recognize you? All right, go ahead, Age.
Right. So we did not get we did not know the auditor's position on our responses, and so what you will see is in the prompt that I have provided, you will see that there are differences with what was initially reported and what should have been reported and updated information obtained. And I think that is what Mr. Dillon is seeking to establish when he speaks to our protocol, because naturally, before we table a report, we give the auditee an opportunity to see what is going to be tabled to indicate whether they accept the findings or not, if there are any errors. In this instance, we did not get that opportunity, and as such, there were matters reported that would not have represented the actual situation, or did not was not reported in keeping with the response that we had provided.
Well, what I would say, Mr. Dillon, without even perusing any parliamentary standing orders, I think it is a standard practice, if that is the clarity you're seeking, in doing an audit, that once the client, you have the exit, the client provides the response, the client should have an opportunity to see what is being tabled before it is tabled, whether they agree with it or not. Ultimately, as the auditor, you have the final say, because you can, based on the response, you can say it is either satisfactory or not. So if that is the clarity, then I think absolutely the client would need to be aware of what is being tabled, and the final responses would be incorporated whether it satisfies the internal auditor or not. Is that where your clarity, that's what you were seeking?
Mr. Chairman, that's not the clarity I'm referring to. But just to make a point, our protocols do dictate that the client gets the opportunity to respond, and the written format, it is understood that that's the official position of the client. So the point that the Auditor General is making, that the final document that is submitted to the Parliament should be seen by them before. The point is taken, and in this particular instant, it was sent before it was tabled.
It was sent to...
It was sent to the Auditor General Department before it was tabled. In this
It was sent
instant.
to the the Auditor General shaking her head and saying no. It's important that we just clear this up because you're saying two different things.
Right.
The Auditor General is saying she didn't see it before it was tabled.
No,
you're saying you sent it to her before it was tabled in Parliament.
So let me give
hold on, Member
clarification.
Sibley. Hold on, Member Sibley.
Mr. Chairman. So I would have requested the report several times last year. Again, by way of email, the report was requested, I believe, on the 27th of January, Owen? Because I needed to know what was the auditor's position on the responses that were provided. On the 28th of January, the auditor submitted the report along with the cabinet note, the cover letter from the Minister of Finance, dated November 20th, 2020, with the advice that it has been tabled. What we learned subsequently, and we actually learned this because of what came on the airwaves, is that though it was sent to Parliament in November, it was not actually tabled until April. But until the report was tabled in April, we did not know that the report was not tabled. But in any event, it would have gone through all the rounds before being tabled. So it actually went to the cabinet, it actually went to the minister, it did not come back to me. When it came to me in November, it was a final document. And I think this is what, and Chairman, I don't want it to appear as if there is a dispute between the Auditor General's Department and the Internal Auditor, because I think I understand where the difference lies. This is the first time that the Internal Auditor would be preparing a report for tabling. And as such, his reports are generally sent to the ministry, to the permanent secretary. So the protocol that I would engage, where I go through several iterations of a report and communication with an auditee, is not something that the internal auditor would have had to do before. I think that would have contributed to the problem. But it is a fact that we did not get to see the report. And as such, it is when the report was actually finalized and in the public's domain that we understood what the internal auditor did not accept. And we believe much of it could have been cleared up had there been discussions before.
All right, Member Sibley's then Gaia, and then I'll come back to you, Member Dillon.
Chair, I don't know if other members is kind of confused as I am, but in order for clarification for me, I would love to hear dates instead of I think, and so on. It's very important, Chair, that the internal auditor gives us some dates, outline the dates when the draft was sent to the Auditor General Department, the responses were received, and subsequent to the responses being received, the report, which date the report was sent. That will provide some clarity. And then I could also reconcile my mind to the January 28th with the November 20th date and the April 30th. To my mind, Chair, as well, the second point, the fact that the report is here means that, and I have confidence in the process, the parliamentary process, that it is here due to proper process being followed. And I'm sure the clerk would not have allowed it to come thus far. So that is not what I am cloudy about. I just want to know procedurally what happened. Thank you.
All right, Member Guy and then Mr. Dillon.
Chairman, I just want to find out, based on the process that Mr. Dillon outlined a while ago, and based on how we have been told in the past as to the arrangements with the AG's department and MDAs, the exit audit, which is the final before interview, before the draft is prepared, was that done with the department?
Yes, Member, the exit was done.
It was done, and all your queries were clarified then?
And that would have been the case, where we had the discussions and the clarity is given.
And they were clarified? You said would have been, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they were?
Yes, because that's the purpose of that meeting.
Okay,
yes.
okay. And my understanding now, based on the concern that exists, is that there is some other concerns that have arisen?
With respect to?
No. Why we're having this discussion now?
Point of order, Chair. I don't think the internal auditor can answer that, because the internal auditor at no point raised that. I think the concerns are raised by the AG.
Chairman,
Hold on.
With the greatest of respect to my colleague, the door was opened by the chief internal auditor.
With all due respect, sir, Chair, is on a point of order.
All right, let me
explain the point of order.
No, allow the member to finish.
All right, let me hear the point of order. Finish, Member Sibley's.
Thank you, Chair, for that protection, and thank you to my colleague. The point I'm raising is that the internal auditor raised the concern about the report, if the report had reached here in accordance to proper procedures.
Right, yes.
And it was the Auditor General who, in seeking to clarify the internal auditor's question, which he then clarified that he had no concern to which the Auditor General had pointed out. It was the Auditor General who had raised some issues, and those issues really had rightfully been placed here for us to understand. So the point of order, Chair, is that the internal auditor would not be the right person for that question to be asked by the member.
All right, let me say, hold on, Member Guy. There are two sets of issues here. One, the internal auditor raised, which I think relates to parliamentary the proper procedure in tabling a report before Parliament. The issues raised by the Auditor General relate to whether the department was given an appropriate opportunity to respond to the issues before they came here. So there are two different sets of issues here that and I don't want us to conflate them. They're important because the Auditor General herself follows a particular process in dealing with the MDAs. It's important that we know whether there's consistency in terms of how this audit was done with that process. And then there are a different set of issues with the internal auditor and how those documents should be tabled here. So there are two sets of issues, Member Guy. So what I would say, let me come back to the Auditor General had raised some concerns about her department not having an opportunity to see the document before it was tabled. you were asked some specific questions about dates by member Sibley's. If you can just answer those in terms of when the draft was sent, exit interview, etc., etc. So we can clear these things and get to the substantive matters.
Okay, so the draft report was issued January 13, 2020. The management responses were received 11th of March 2020. The final report, which included the management responses from the Auditor General, was issued January 28, 2021, and the report was actually tabled April 12, 2021.
And just for my clarity, the January 2021 final, and that went to the Auditor General?
That final report, she rightfully indicated that it was requested and sent January 28, 2021.
Okay. All right, so I think the contention really, from what I can see here, Auditor General, is that you would have wanted an opportunity after providing the March 20th 2020 responses to have a determination about whether those responses were satisfactory, not before the report was sent to Parliament. That's really the issue you have expressed here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I really don't want to make it into an issue. We had a meeting, the Financial Secretary, Mr. Dillon, myself, my team, and his team, and there was agreement that going forward, that the department would be given an opportunity to assess the ministry, the internal auditor's response or assessment of our response. And I'll give you an example, which I pointed out to Mr. Dillon. There are 2 errors in the report. If the report had been shared with us before, then we would have had an opportunity to point out, to say, look, this does not agree with what we had communicated to you and other matters. So and I do not want it to be seen as an issue and a dispute. It's a matter of process and how we deal with that process going forward, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Okay, I've heard, yes, Member Wilson.
Yes. Morning, Chair. I'm trying to follow the discussion. So is it that the Auditor General is saying she did not see the report at all?
No, Member Wilson, no, she's not saying that at all. We're kind of going through it already before you came.
But Chair, what I'm trying to, because it will set the context for the rest of the discussion that we'll be having.
No, she didn't say she didn't see it. No, there was all right, let me try and recap. The concern raised by the Auditor General is that she didn't see the final document before it came to Parliament. There was an opportunity for an exit interview. There was an opportunity for her to respond to the issues, but the final document which came here, she was not appraised of that before it came here. And what she has said is there are things that would have been clarified which would have made the report more clear if she had seen it. So that is, in essence, what the Auditor General is saying.
So she would have seen the draft?
Yes, but not a final copy.
But not.
Yes, she has said that, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you, she would have seen the draft before the final copy was sent to Parliament. Is it that she had made raised some concern as to the content? Because I am hearing from her that there were 2 discrepancies, so to speak. Did she notice that in the draft and made reference to it to the internal department for them to make correction to it so that the final document would have seen the amendment or the changes?
All right, well, I'll ask her to respond to it.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's just the problem. We provided a response to the draft. We did not get an opportunity to see the internal auditor's assessment of that draft. So we would not have known that there are 2 responses attributed to us that did not that is not in keeping with what we said. What we received was the document, as I indicated earlier, that had the cabinet note. It was the final document. So the minister had signed off on it November 20th with a letter to the Speaker of the House, which I interpreted and which was communicated in January that it had been sent to Parliament for tabling. So at January 28, 2021, it was my understanding, Mr. Chairman, that the report had been tabled. It was not until it came out in the media. In fact, when it came out in the media, I thought it was an error when it said that the report was tabled today, Tuesday. But having done the checks, I learned that it was in fact sent in November, but there was some procedural problem and they were actually retracted and finally tabled in April. That was totally unknown to me until after the events became public. So I would not have seen. So to answer Member Clark's question directly, we would not have seen what the internal auditor finalized because the report did not return to us. And let me just give this. I'm at strain to say, Mr. Chairman, because that I don't want this to be seen as a dispute. All reports that I send here, that's tabled in the House. We discussed it several times here. Every report that is sent here, the final report, the head of agency sees that report before it is tabled. Not the draft report, no. They get the draft report, they respond to the draft report, the report is finalized, and they see the final report, and they are advised that this is what is going to be tabled. If you have any concerns, if there are any outstanding matters, if you believe that it is erroneous, please advise us by such and such a date because it is going to be tabled on such and such a date.
Yeah, Member Clark.
So, through you again, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Dillon, I've heard what Auditor General is saying. I'm now asking you if what she's saying concur with what your thoughts or your opinion or the facts are.
Go ahead, Member.
All right. So, as I mentioned earlier on, there's a particular set of protocols that we follow as internal auditors. And those are consistent with the internal audit manual that is issued by the Ministry of Finance. When the exit interview is conducted, that is where we discuss any issues, any clarities that are required at that particular time. And during that session, we can obtain interim responses, which would be verbal responses that we would have obtained in that particular session. However, consistent with our protocols, we request formal responses, which take the form of a written response. So in this case, we actually did receive written responses to the draft report.
All right, members, I am clear, but I want us to proceed. I believe from everything I've heard, there was a breakdown, I think, at the very end in terms of the normal process followed by MDAs. We have the document in front of us, which I want to get to substantively. Where there are gaps, we'll have an opportunity, and the Auditor General's team can raise the clarification or the issues that would have been subsequent to the tabling of this report. Yes, Member Clark.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I listened clearly and as keen as possible to the Auditor General, and she keeps mentioning that she does not want it to seem as if there is a dispute. In my mind, I think, it is my opinion, that there is some standoff between both entities. It is my opinion, because I still read the body language, and it tells me that she is still having a great concern as to the identification of two matters in the draft, and that she would have responded to that situation hoping that something would have been done, but to her dismay, or to her surprise, that the final document was submitted without her knowing. I want to have a clear understanding from her or from Mr. Dillon. Was this, or were these two matters that were pointed out in the draft, were they corrected? Were they amended? Were they withdrawn? Were they removed altogether? What happened to those two issues in the final document?
Go ahead, Madam AG, and then Mr. Dillon.
Right. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Dillon circulated a letter last week. I believe it should have been sent to the members, where he actually acknowledged that the reports contained the errors, and he indicated what should have been said. So that letter should be with you, Mr. Chairman. So whereas the final report was not corrected, it really couldn't be corrected because the report is already tabled. But Mr. Dillon has sent something subsequently addressing those two
Is this
issues.
the May 3rd letter from the Financial Secretary?
Yes, that should be it.
So members, there's a 2-page letter which was part of our handout. It's on legal size paper, addressed to the committee clerk, caption audit report in respect of the Auditor General's Department for the period April 2016 to March 2019. This document, members.
So, Chair,
Where it is, you find it?
so if I'm hearing correctly, then those two matters, oh, sorry.
All right, go ahead, member. You finish.
Well,
Right, so Chair, for my clarity, so I am to understand then that these two matters were indeed addressed, and this letter would have, and this is to you, Ms. Monroe Ellis. I'm just trying to, for my understanding, full understanding of the matter, is that these two issues that you had raised earlier were addressed, and this letter would have been a conclusion to those discussions.
Correct, member.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if I look at the substantive part, under traveling allowance, it says the internal audit unit is in agreement with the Auditor General's management, is in agreement that the Auditor General's management response was not accurately represented. This is attributed to an editing oversight, and that is provided there. Similarly, under salary payments, and then also, yes, and also under salary payments. So the two substantive issues would have been in this letter. Is that correct, Mr. Dillon?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Can we now proceed to the substantive matters? Can we start now with your report? Let's start with business continuity.
Chair,
yes.
So I can just assume then that this report is complete and is to the satisfaction of both Mr. Dillon and to Ms. Monroe Ellis, with this letter included. So there is no issue that we will be discussing.
Well, I am clear that having gotten this, it resolves the issue raised by the Auditor General, and Mr. Dillon has said that. So I believe we can move to the substantive matters raised in the audit.
I think the question that member Wilson asks is a valid question, because we want to make sure that both parties are in agreement with what is there now.
Well, they had said so, but if you want to go ahead. He acknowledged, but okay.
We have acknowledged, Mr. Chairman, but I want to hear from both entities, both parties, if they are now at one with this letter being sent to us. So once it is, then we can move forward, because there are some questions that are going to be asked that we need answers for.
Right,
and once we can get the understanding that they both agree that everything is comfortable now, then we can go right ahead.
All right, well, let me explicitly ask both. I thought they had acknowledged before, but I'll ask Mr. Dillon. All right, Mr. Dillon, and then the Auditor General.
I am fine with where we are with the report.
Mr. Chairman, my responses are contained therein. I'm fine with the report. As auditors, we will disagree. So where I disagree, I'm not saying that the internal auditor is incorrect. I've provided my own responses, and that's what we're here to do, to discuss those. So we can proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right, could we start then on, and I'm on your report, Mr. Dillon, on page 10, let's start with business continuity as the first substantive finding, and then we can go through the report. Member Sibley's.
Chair, I just procedurally, you're going to be taking findings by findings, Chair, and for the internal auditor to read finding 1, the Auditor General to give her opinion, and then we ask question, is that the process? Because, Chair, I have some questions before we go into the specifics of the report. If it is that you're asking, Chair, that the Auditor General, the internal auditor, Mr. Dillon, goes through all his report, and the Auditor General responds, and then we are allowed to ask questions, then I'm fine with that. But I have some general questions that I wish to ask in order for me to go to the specifics.
Well, so to answer your question, yes, I was going to, the internal auditor doesn't need to read verbatim. He can summarize, the Auditor General can respond, and then we can take the questions from there. So the intention was to go in that level of detail, and then the members would have an opportunity to ask questions. All right?
All right, so we looked at whether or not the Auditor General had a business continuity plan to inform specifically to information technology. And this was on the basis that we understood that we're in a situation where various disasters were occurring, and it was critical that the entity was in a position to continue their business in the event of any of these eventualities actually occurring. Right, so based on the management responses, in brief, the department indicated that they did not have a plan called business continuity plan. However, they identified various protocols and policies that could support them bringing the business back on course in the case of any eventuality.
Madam AG, you want to just elaborate on what you would have called your disaster preparedness policy and plan?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the internal auditor is correct that we do not have a document called business continuity plan. What we have, I would like to classify it as a business continuity strategy. Our business continuity procedures are embedded in our standard operating procedures. The concern is that it is not codified in one document. I accept full responsibility for that, Mr. Chairman, because my position has always been different. I know that my co-workers are also of the view that it needs to be codified. It was always my view that it is more important that your business continuity process and what it is that you do must be clearly understood by each process owner. So whereas a document does not exist that stipulates what exactly must be done by each department, what must be done is actually embedded in our standard operating procedures, our policies and procedures. What is required now is for that to be pulled together from all the documents that we have and to codify it in one document, which we have agreed that we will do so. A provision has been made in the current budget to engage a consultant who can design and codify what we do.
What would be the time frame on that?
I know that it is in our procurement plan to be executed in the first quarter of this year.
Okay. Thank you. Member Guy?
AG, the audit also as part of this business continuity at 3.0 spoke about the improper backup practices, and I see in your report you mentioned about access of a cloud-based storage. Is it that, are we to understand that you do have a cloud-based storage for all documents in the department, so in the eventuality of any disaster, that you can retrieve all the documents you have, or it is only utilized, as in the document here, to access information in case we are unable to operate from office?
Thanks for that question, member. Unfortunately, my IT director is unavoidably absent, and I think he would speak to it more eloquently than I can. But we are partially cloud-based. So we have the M365 that drives our business processes. Teammate and Caseware are still server-based. We are intended to move cloud-based come August, in fact, but we have to acquire the necessary infrastructure to do so, which we are in the process of doing. As it pertains to the backup policy, I think the internal auditor will admit that we do have a very robust backup policy, but there was one flaw that he identified, though I don't believe it was reported as such in the report, in that it was reported that we only have one set of tapes, and that's not accurate. We have, I think, 2 to 3 sets of tapes, and the tapes, I think, allow for a 4 weeks of rewriting of information, and it is changed out. What happened over the years is that we have been trying to find a suitable off-site location for storage, and it has proven quite difficult, well, costly in some instances. We had approached eGov initially, but at the time eGov, well, what was reported to me is that eGov didn't have a system that would clearly separate the tapes for the different agencies, and so we were trying to find something that was more suitable. However, since then, we have had a discussion with eGov, who has advised us to acquire our own vault. So we are actually in the process, that procurement is in process. We will acquire the vault and they will store it, and they're actually developing a memorandum of understanding for us to sign off. No, but I think by August, most of our systems will be cloud-based.
But AG, the desire to have a remote storage or off-site storage is critical still. So even I understand you could build a vault which is, say, fireproof, but the move nowadays is to have remote storage or off-site storage or remote access, or have everything stored in a cloud-based application. So it is critical that this be pursued ASAP because of the nature of your operations. Correct,
member. And in fact, the reason why we have not yet transitioned, there are a number of things that we needed to do in terms of the infrastructure and having an infrastructure that would enable that. So we had to, acquire a firewall system. Of course, that system, it took a while because it had to be designed by eGov, but we have since acquired a firewall system which will be delivered soon. The servers will also be delivered soon, which will allow us to go to Teammate Plus, which is cloud-based, and likewise to transition to caseware cloud-based as well. So, and let me just clarify that it's not that we're building a vault; it's acquiring a suitable storage device that can fit in the rack at eGov. My understanding, which is what we're in the process of doing.
All right, member Sibley's, Charles, then Henriquez.
Chair, as I had said, I had some general question, but I will ask some question relating to the business continuity. AG, you stated that your plan and policies are not codified. That is a term you use, codified. And you consider it to be not a business continuity plan, but a business continuity strategy. Madam AJ, you have managed to confuse me. Because plan, strategy, tell us, if it is all over the place, meaning you have policy here that may include something else, included a bit of business continuity aspect, you have a next thing over there that might involve something else, and have a bit of business continuity activity, and so on. How then it becomes a strategy being splintered?
Thanks for that question, member. Thankfully, we are not confused. The business continuity strategy started many years ago when we took the decision that we would automate our process. The aim was to ensure that wherever we are, we never considered that we would have a scenario that would require us to work from home. But certainly we wanted to be able to tap in to the system wherever we are so that the audits could continue. It is with that why years ago, we decided to first provide all officers with machines. And once we had everyone equipped, we then decided to acquire the teammate software that would allow for the automating of the audit process. And the next step was to acquire VPN that would allow the officers, for wherever they are, to actually link into the system to upload the information and the work that they do. It's not a matter of it being disjointed. And let me just correct to say, I did not say that our policies and procedures are not codified. I said what we needed to do was now to codify a business continuity plan, because specifically all our plans and procedures, embedded is continuity, embedded is the need for continuous improvement. And Mr. Chairman, yes, it may bring some confusion for some, but the truth is that I take an approach of agility. I take an approach where the department must be able to respond at all times when there are changes happening around us. We may take different approaches. There is no requirement in government for us to have a business continuity plan, but it is a best practice. How you go about doing what is important. The whole purpose of continuity is to ensure that in the time of crisis that you can continue. That's the aim. So it doesn't matter if you have a manual, which is what exists in many cases. We have a plethora of manuals, and you have them placed on a shelf. What is important is that you know what you're supposed to do, and you will know what you're supposed to do when the procedures are embedded in your daily processes.
Point of order. Chair, at no time I had asked the AG with regards to what is the practice all over the place, right? What I had asked the AG is to explain the point of business strategy vis-a-vis business continuity plan. And that is what I wanted the AG to explain. And I have a follow-up question. I think she answered it in the first part.
Right, yes.
And I have a follow-up question to which she answered in the first.
So you really have a follow-up question then,
yes,
not so
Chair.
much a point of order.
It's a point of order because she, the AG was, my word, schooling us in what practices.
She expanded.
My word,
she
Chair.
expanded.
My word, Chair.
All right, go to your follow-up.
And I will go to my next point. You said that I want you to explain to us, codify. What is it that you wish to codify? Yes, explain to this committee what is it which you wish to codify. Because to my mind, when one is going to codify something, it means that it is more than one element that need to come together into one document. So explain to me, what is it that you said you are going to codify?
I spoke to standard operating procedures that exist for every business processes that we have in the department. And what I indicated is that embedded in our standard operating procedures are elements that would capture the steps that we need to take to ensure that there is proper response mechanism in the event of a crisis. How do we respond under those circumstances? But those, Mr. Chairman, as I indicated, they are captured in the policies and procedures that guide the various business processes. When I say codify, I mean that we now need to extract from those standard operating procedures the elements that relate to business continuity and include it. And we're speaking about ICT now, because it is ICT that the auditor is referencing. So we now need to pull those elements and put it in one plan, because the concern is that there is no one document that you can pick up and see exactly what the business continuity specific to ICT should be, because it is, as would be suggested, disaggregated in the various standard operating procedures for the various business processes that we have. I hope that.
Member Sibley's, hold a second. Member Charles, and then Member Henriquez. I'll come back to you.
Good morning, everyone. AG, I have two quick questions. The Business Continuity Plan, the BCP, is this the very first time you're hearing of a BCP? That's my first question. And have you ever... Can you hear me? I wanted to know if this was the first time you're hearing, have you ever seen one of these plan booklets in any of the other agencies that you've audited? Or is this the first time you're hearing of it when they audited you?
No, it's not the first that we would have heard of the business continuity plan, because what the internal auditor raised was actually what our internal auditor raised. And as I indicated, I took a different approach for it, and that's why I said I'll accept full responsibility in terms of the approach that has been taken. But what I can say to you is that it's actually very difficult to get your hand on a template of a business continuity plan in our search for it. And I think that's because it is so much embedded in your business continuity plan, I guess, would have to take into consideration your culture. Nonetheless, as we have said, we have agreed that we will get a business continuity plan, and we will in fact engage someone.
Let me have a follow-up question to the internal auditor from Ministry of Finance. When you do internal audits, do you see this BCP in other agencies?
All right, so our mandate in terms of scope is limited to the Ministry of Finance, the Auditor General, and 3 other entities. For the record, we did, I believe, 3 audits that included business continuity, and this was a similar finding that we saw, wherein these entities had various policies and procedures, but as it relates to a formal plan, they did not have any.
Okay, so you have not seen it of manual?
That's correct.
All right, Member Sibley's, you had another question on the business continuity before we move on? Oh, Member Wilson also. But go Member Sibley's, then Member Wilson.
I'm going to yield to Member Wilson, and then after Member Wilson, I'll...
Okay.
Thank you, Member. To the AG, I wanted to know, you speak about the strategy. I wanted to know if the strategy was written anywhere. The strategy that you have for business continuity.
The strategy would be embedded in our policies and procedures.
So it would not, right, it would be implied, it would not be a document that's written. So say, for example, I was hired by the AG department and I come in as a new employee. What would I get to say, okay, this is a strategy that we have going forward? Or am I supposed to just read the entire operations manual of the government and departments and assume the business continuity strategy from that? Because I want to know if there is some document that outlines the strategy.
Yes. Through you, Chairman, I know that we have a document that speaks to our continued efforts for business continuity. I am looking at my corporate plan, if she can assist me here. I don't know which specific document to, if it's our strategic business plan that speaks to it, but I know I've spoken to business continuity as a major focus for us. I'll just ask someone to look for it just to make reference to exactly where it is. But member, let me just say that, and I indicated that I will take full responsibility for this. It's my considered approach. I mean, I'll be honest that I indicate that I would prefer to operate on the principle of continuous improvement, agility, and our process being embedded rather than being layered on top of each other. That's my approach to get that done. The acceptance, I will accept that we need to put together a business continuity plan so someone can have a look at it and to say, okay, this is the strategy. So that's not, and I've responded as such. So it's not a continuing issue for us.
Thank you. One more question, AG. As it relates to developing this business continuity plan, during your audit of other departments, is this something that you would take into consideration? So if you're auditing the Ministry of Labor or you're auditing other entities, would you take that into consideration during the audit?
I would think that when the IT auditors are, I don't have one of the reports in front of me, so I can't tell you specifically about the specific wording, but I know that they would be looking to see whether whether the entities have any strategy for business continuity. And let me add as well that we did say and communicate to the internal auditor that we have a disaster recovery plan and the backup plan as well. So it's not that we don't have anything written anywhere, it's just that it is, and the internal auditor has admitted that there is a robust backup plan. That is a part of our business continuity.
All right, members, you finished, Member Wilson?
One more.
Okay.
So the final question that I have is why did it take so long for you to come to this realization? Is it that there was not enough importance placed on the business continuity plan, or is it that because you have this strategy, you did not see it as critically important for the AG department to have one? And I just wanted to add that business continuity plan goes beyond just IT. It also outlines the operation procedure for what employees should do. And it's critical to have one because outside of the pandemic, you have other global incidences, terrorism, for example. And where I used to work, we had one that that was updated yearly, primarily because of terrorism. So we do have other major events, and Jamaica being in the tropical region, we always face hurricanes and flooding, extreme weather conditions. So it's critical that we have a business continuity plan, not just for IT, as it's being discussed predominantly, but also for the operations of the organization so it can continue in crisis.
So the internal auditor singled out IT because he was satisfied that he saw business continuity for documentation for the operations. And that is why he said specifically IT, which we are saying, well, we have the backup policy and we have a number of other procedures. For example, with teammate, that it is written, and yeah, I'm trying to look at him, but your head is in the way. Sorry, thanks. Right. So, for example, there are two applications that we use that would be pertinent for the business continuity. That is the teammate and the caseware. The procedure that we have for teammate to ensure that there is continuity is one, the officers are required to sync their work. So they work local from their computer. But on a daily basis, they are required to sync and update whatever information to the server. To do so, they require the VPN, the virtual private network tokens, which is what I spoke to. Each officer has a VPN token that would allow for that syncing. When it is synced with the server, there is that other element of it. I know that there is also saved on the SAN, which is SAN, but my IT director is not here to speak to that technical issue. And it is also saved on the tape. So there are several layers where the work is being backed up to allow for the continuity. It is that process which is not written, which is what the internal auditor is saying, that we need to write that in a document. So whereas it is written, it's a procedure for the auditors that they must do this, it is not written elsewhere in a business continuity document. So that is what needs to be included in there. When I say that I want us to codify, it's because come August, or probably by the end of the year, the only element of the department that is not really automated is our records management, and we're in the process of doing that, which means we recognize the fundamental shift in the department from 10 years ago, where we were highly manual, to an office that is almost paperless, which requires, I guess, something far more fundamental than the policies that we have, which is why I say we would engage a consultant who can codify the different practices that we have, assess them as well to see if what we have is sufficient, and for us to design it in a way so that we can share the procedures. Because I certainly don't want us to pay for something that we will just put down and draw on when the internal auditor comes to say, here, yes, we do have it. It needs to be something practical, and that is practiced on a daily basis, and that is what we're working towards.
All right, thank you, AG. Member Sibley's.
Thank you, Chair. Before I ask the AG question based on what the AG said a couple minutes ago, I want to ask the internal auditor, the chief internal auditor, Sir Dillon, is there a business continuity plan for other things outside of IT at the Auditor General's Department? Did you check on that? Did your scope review that?
Our scope was limited to IT.
Okay, so it's not fair then for the AG to say you did not bring up the matter of the other areas, and you only bring up the matter of IT because that was the only weakness, because your scope was IT. Madam AG, I have a question here. With regards to saving your backup system, you do not have a remote area where disk or etc. is currently being stored, right? How long has this been? Because this does not require AG for your infrastructure firewall system to be set up, you know, so, and for you to wait until coming next month. This can be done tomorrow. So I am of the view that at least I would be comfortable, AG, if you say to us that with regards to your backup tapes, that you are going to make arrangement for them to be stored at a place that is safe, because should anything happen, you don't, where are the backups? At the said office?
Yeah, okay, so let me respond to you, but I just want to respond to what the internal auditor said, because I did not know that the internal auditor only focused on IT. We presented our disaster preparedness policy and plan to the internal auditor, and he accepted receiving that. I gather that if he received it, he would have reviewed it. Now, that is the disaster and preparedness plan for the operation. So I'm a little taken aback that he says that he was restricted to IT. That was not known to me. Now, as it pertains to the backup document, previously for many years, our tapes were kept at the Accountant General's Department. When the accommodation issue for the Accountant General's Department became tenuous, they said they could no longer secure those tapes. And it is since that time that we have been trying to find suitable accommodation. However, I did say that we have come to some agreement with eGov. The system that eGov didn't have vaults. So if you brought your tapes there was no, the environment that they had did not separate your tapes from the tapes for anyone else. What they have advised us to do is to acquire our own storage device. I think we have agreed on the size, which is 18 by 18, that they said that they're able to accommodate. And I did say that a memorandum of understanding is being developed. So going forward, we will be storing our devices in a fireproof device which we will acquire and store at eGov.
AG, I suppose it is not as critical as I thought, because if there is something that happened at your office, God forbid, you would have to wait until all of these things are put in place. It seems to be taken from the time the Accountant General office was not able to assist. AG, the point I'm making is, from that point, when the Accountant General wasn't able to assist, I am of the view that there should have been much greater effort to make sure there is a copy of your backup system stored elsewhere. And that is really the point I'm trying to bring across, that we really need to treat it with some sense of more urgency, if there is such a thing. Chair, I have a procedural question to ask. At what point, Chair? Because I know it is usually that members would be able to ask general questions before we go into the specifics of a report. At what point, Chair, am I going to be given the opportunity to ask some general questions?
Well, remember what I said at the outset. I wanted to follow the sequencing of the report. So I started with business continuity. The next issue is the information. I'm not leaving it. I'm just doing them at the process. So I wanted to go that route because we are at 11:49, and at this rate, I don't know if we'll even complete this, much less to get to the appropriation accounts. So I wanted us to go through, allow members an opportunity to ask the specific questions, and then if there are some general questions you wanted to ask, we could take them after we go through. I don't know if we're going to be as detailed in every aspect of the report, but that is the sequencing that I had planned. All right?
No, Chair.
Member Wilson, you have a follow-up on this?
Yes. I wanted to ask Mr. Dillon, hearing the conversation and focusing back on the business continuity plan. First question, are you in receipt of the disaster risk management plan that was mentioned just now?
So I was actually looking at the email just now, and the document that was referred to, which was sent to us, was actually a draft document. So a document was actually sent.
That word? Repeat the word for me.
Draft. Draft.
So you are indeed in receipt. Did you communicate at any point that the review of the business continuity plan is limited to IT only? Did you communicate that to the AG's department?
And I mean, this discussion was had clearly in the exit, in case there was any misunderstanding about the scope. So it was communicated via the draft audit report and in the exit meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, let me move. Are there any other questions on business continuity? Yes, Member Sibley.
Chair, in light of the fact that the Chief Internal Auditor says draft, I know that a draft, anything that is draft is not is. It's just not it. So I would like to hear the AG's response to that. If the AG is talking about a draft report or a draft business continuity plan or a business continuity plan.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of what the internal auditor is saying. We have a document that I know I signed off on at an executive management committee. The internal auditor did not communicate to me that he had received a draft document and he needed a final document. I can't speak to those issues. I would have to do further checks on them.
So you're basically saying, as far as you're concerned, you sent what is a final approved document. Is that what you're saying?
I would not have sent a document. It is my understanding that they reviewed the document. Unfortunately, my IT officer is not here to provide greater clarification on the discussions had. But this disagreement is new to me.
Okay. So from your understanding is that what was provided to the auditors would have been a final document which would have been reviewed by management and agreed by management?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, as I said, we're not sure about the draft document. One thing I know for sure is that as a part of our ISO certification, we had to, actually all of those documents had to be addressed and control features added to them. I don't want to act any loggerheads with the internal auditor here. I would really want to go back and check the facts to see exactly what was made available.
Hold on. Member Guy.
Chairman, as you have quite correctly indicated, it's unlikely that we're going to be finishing this today. Could you therefore ask the AG that at the next sitting that the IT person be present so that these questions can be answered and that the members would not be, as well as the AG, be seeking answers that they don't really know. So we could move on to another area and ask that these questions be postponed further deliberations until that individual is here. Okay.
So the AG has asked for an opportunity to just clarify whether it was a draft. Mr. Dillon is saying from his perspective what he received was a draft. So AG, you can come back to us and confirm whether that was a draft or not. Member Chair.
Chair, on the point that you just raised, Chair, if I just may, I am of the view, Chair, that it's not just the Auditor General, and I'm thinking that something is procedurally wrong here. The auditor, the chief internal auditor said to us that he received a draft report. The Auditor General said she's not sure. She will have to check. I'm of the view, let me correct myself. The Auditor General is not saying that a draft report wasn't sent. What the Auditor General is saying that, to the best of her knowledge, there is a final report because based on ISO certification, they would have to submit a business continuity plan or something similar to that. Policy document or something. So, Chair, we need to make sure we don't suggest that the Chief Internal Auditor did not receive a draft, because neither the Chief Internal Auditor nor the Auditor General is saying that it wasn't a draft submitted. So
we're not suggesting that at all. It was just to provide the clarity, and the AG had said she doesn't have all the information right in front of her to provide that clarity. So
no, the part of your what you had said, Chair, and we can check, is the fact that you said to say whether or not it was a draft that was sent, and that is the point that I'm trying to clear up, Chair. That the AG can check to see if she has a final report.
I can confirm.
Go ahead, AG.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues have just shared with
Turn on your mic.
My colleagues have just shared with me an email that was sent out to the general staff on the 5th of September 2019, sharing that attached here with our copies of the department's disaster preparedness and emergency plan and disaster preparedness policy. So this is we generally share the policies with the staff, which is why I'm saying that I was not aware. I don't know why a draft would have been shared with the internal auditor. The internal auditor did not communicate to us. I see nothing suggesting that he had received a draft. So I did not know that there was any difference here. But as I told you, we would have had to have had this policy now too, actually, as a requirement for our ISO certification.
All right, so hold on, Member Sibley. So
it's right here, so I can send it to I can forward it to
I know, but the fact,
internal auditor.
AG, yes, it would have been sent internally. I don't know if that is what was sent to the internal auditor. I don't know, but what I'm saying is I don't want us to spend a long time going back and forth on this issue. I think we can get some clarity. We may not be able to resolve it right here, right now, because all information is not in front of us, but we can come back to it. But I don't want to spend a prolonged period of time trying to determine whether it's a draft or whether...
No, Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, sir, with all due respect to the chair. If it is that we have to spend the time to get clarity, to get understanding, to get clear indicators, then that's what we're going to do, sir. I don't think we have anywhere going for the rest of 4.5 years.
Correct.
And so if it is going to take us that time, sir, for the PAC to get the information from both parties so that John public will be in a better understanding of how governance is in Jamaica, then that's what we are going to do.
And I'm not suggesting that we bypass the issue. What I'm saying is, at this point in time, I don't know if we can resolve it right here, right now. So I'm not saying that we'll leave the issue fully, but I'm saying going back and forth right here now, I don't know if it's going to get us the answer. And I'm saying that it's midday. We're clearly not going to finish this document today, the examination. And I would ask that when we come back next week, that we seek to clarify the issue. That's all I'm saying. Because we are at the first finding. And there are a whole set of findings that we have not even reached. So I'm not dismissing the point. I'm just saying we have to be also efficient in the management of our own time. Member Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Dillon, when you did your exit, is it exit interview? Is it called an exit interview? Was the AG present? How did you do the exit interview, and who's present? And who? Because there's a lot that she's not aware of, and I need to know when you did the exit interview, because you said that you discussed this in the exit interview.
So the question is, member, if the Accountant General was present, the Auditor General was present? No. The exit interview.
But other members of the team would have been present?
Correct.
Okay. Who were those members of the team who would have been present?
I'm unable to tell you all the members. I believe the Auditor General team could tell you who the members are. But I know that the meeting was led by the Director of Corporate Services, and senior members of the department were present.
All right, Member Charles, you have a follow-up, and then I'll move to Member Sibley's, Wilson, and then Clark.
My follow-up question is to the AG. And Mr. Dillon says that this was discussed. Did you get a report from your team of what was discussed in the exit interview?
I would have received the draft report and the responses that were provided, which would have been sent to Mr. Dillon.
Hold on, Member Sibley's. Member Wilson. So Wilson, Sibley's, and then Clark.
All right. Thank you, Chair. This is to Mr. Dillon. Was it communicated that a draft was sent to your office at any point? Did you indicate to the AG's department that it was a draft that you are in receipt of?
All right. What I'm understanding is that upon receiving the draft document, so the process would entail the auditor communicating with the process owner. And in this particular case, the person that is in charge of IT was the one who the auditor was liaising with. And when the draft document was sent, it was communicated to that particular person, the process owner.
Thank you.
And that was communicated verbally or in writing?
Okay, so the process would entail the audit team interviewing the process owners, and that interview involves ICQs and other discussions. And
sorry, just tell me what ICQs mean.
Internal control questionnaire. So it is, those ICQs are geared towards looking at the internal controls. So it is within those discussions that it was highlighted to that particular process owner that the document was a draft.
All right, thank you. One more question. And just to follow up on the scope, because Mr. Dillon, you did say it was communicated that the scope was pertaining to IT. But Ms. AG, Ms. Ellis, you said, Mrs. Ellis, sorry, you did indicate earlier that you were not aware that the scope was limited to IT. But Mr. Dillon is saying that it was communicated as such.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at some pointers that were made, a summary of the significant findings, and it's how I interpreted it. It says the Auditor General's Department is currently without a business continuity plan or a continuity focus committee. This did not say ICT. My understanding is that we then provided the disaster preparedness plan. It also said that the information technology policy has been in draft for over 10 years. There's no evidence that the document has formally documented a backup policy. The audit noted improper backup practices. Now, I think these were notes that were made before the exit interview, and information was presented. So some of what I've raised here did not make it to the final report, because my understanding is that the requisite information was provided to the internal auditor. So reading the Auditor General's is without a business continuity plan. It is for that reason why the response says we have a disaster preparedness plan. And in my discussion with the IT director, he explained what was communicated. But I do not want to, I would rather the IT director to say specifically the communication that he had with the internal auditor. So my understanding is that arising out of this initial finding, which says the Auditor General's Department is currently without a business continuity plan, because we submitted the disaster preparedness plan, it was amended, and the amendment was to say specific to ICT.
Hold on, remember. So if I'm to understand, then it was communicated to you, to your office, that it was limited to ICT?
No. It was not communicated that it was limited to ICT. What was communicated was based on the original finding is that the Auditor General's Department is currently without a business continuity plan and a continuity focus committee. The draft report, which my assumption is that it is after these initial findings and information, because the audit is ongoing, and so there's exchange of information along the way. When the disaster preparedness plan was presented, the finding was amended to say specific to ICT, suggesting that, okay, we're satisfied that you have a disaster preparedness plan, which I told you we circulated to the staff, but you do not have one for ICT, which we accepted, that we do not have a disaster preparedness plan, a business continuity specific to ICT, and I explained at the introduction why it is that did not exist.
So at which point were you aware that it was focusing on ICT?
When I saw the draft.
Oh.
No, no.
Oh.
I don't want any. Let us be clear. There was no point in time. There was no point in time that I was aware that it was focusing solely on ICT until this very moment, when Mr. Dillon said that his scope did not expand to that area, because all information that I have in front of me, and Mr. Dillon himself has said that he requested the disaster recovery plan and he got a draft, which would suggest that you were looking at the disaster recovery plan.
Just to, Chair, I'm going to yield. I have a whole lot of questions. Mr. Dillon, over to you. You said earlier that it was communicated that the scope of the inquiry would be limited to ICT, but the AG's department is saying that they were not aware. The AG is saying, sorry. Yes, thank you, colleague. The AG is saying that this was not communicated. So could you clarify from my understanding, because there seems to be, I'm not understanding, it's not making any sense to me. So could you just clarify how the AG was informed of the scope? But she said she doesn't get it.
Go ahead, Mr. Dillon. Go ahead.
So this communication would have been done throughout the audit process, and it would actually begin from an overview would have been given from the entrance meeting, and when we dive into the detail work, those specifics would have been communicated. So in addition to that, the draft report was submitted, and management would have had the opportunity to look at it and see what we found. And subsequent to the issuance of the draft, we would have an exit meeting, where we discuss what is entailed in the draft report. So although it would come out within that process of communication.
Chair, may I? I have a question for the Chief Internal Auditor and his team. Was the AG at the entrance meeting? Was the AG, the Auditor General, was she at the entrance meeting?
I am being told no. So I'm going off memory. I cannot remember, but I'm being told that no, she was not.
Thank you. AG, I want to ask you that same question because the Chief Internal Auditor gave the answer in a hearsay fashion. He's being told. And I therefore asking you were you at the entrance meeting?
I don't believe I was at the entrance meeting.
You don't believe?
No, I was not at the entrance meeting.
Very well.
In fact, I do not believe I was in the country for the exit meeting nor the entrance meeting.
I'm going to ask you to confirm that at our next time we meet.
I'm confirming I was not at the entrance meeting.
No, I'm not saying whether or not you were.
Meeting.
Madam AG, can you just give me some latitude to finish the question?
Oh, I thought that's what you were asking. My apologies.
You said that you are of the view, and the way you coined the answer, Madam AG, is not with some amount of certainty with regards to whether or not you were in the country or outside of the country, or if you were on leave or you weren't on leave. So the question I'm asking, can you confirm that the reason that you were not, are you able to state the reason you were not at these two very, very, very important meetings as the head of the department?
Hold on, hello. No, she had.
Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, I'm not getting full information as to why, but let me add that me not being at the meeting does not mean that I'm not aware of what is taking place. I would have received all the information.
Point of order, Chair. I am not asking, that was not. My question really never questioned whether or not the Auditor General has knowledge, full knowledge, or some knowledge of what takes place at the entrance and the exit meeting. I am fully aware that an exit and an entrance meeting is one that the head of entity is to be present, and where the head of entity cannot be present, that it would be delegated and the head of entity would be fully apprised of what happened at the meeting. Okay. Chair, I am glad the AG, nonetheless, before I ask the question, inform us that she was fully apprised. Because she had full knowledge, those are the words she used, full knowledge. Because that is where I'm going now with the question. Because the Chief Internal Auditor stated that at the exit interview, the entrance interview, right throughout the audit. But during the audit, the head of entity is not necessarily a part of any interviews. But at the beginning and at the end, the head of entity ought to be fully apprised. And the Chief Internal Auditor stated that it was explained, the scope of the audit was explained. And if this is so, and the Auditor General is saying that she has full knowledge of these meetings, then there seems to me some sort of gap. And it is not reconciling as it relates to the fact that the scope of the audit was not fully understood.
Hold 1 second. Mr. Dillon just wants to make a point before the AG comes in.
All right. If the chair will allow, the auditor who executed the IT audit, Mr. Clark, is behind me. He wanted to give a clarity on the scope, if you'll allow.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. So in the initial interview that we had with them, the full scope was spoken of, and the questions we pointed out where the full area of BCP was that we were going to look at. We afterwards issued ICQ internal questionnaires to the IT officer who stated that they do not have. We have record of that. That was sent in the email. Since he did not have any, he stated that they did not have, we would have not followed on with the questions that we had in that area, because we would not be auditing something that they said they did not have. So he spoke that they had something in IT area. So that's when the question, majority of our audit was looked into that area. And that again was said. He did speak about documents that they have, and what documents that he sent in the email, which is the 28th of August 2019. He said he was working on some documents, and at the point we asked him clearly, did management know about these? He said that they have not signed off on them, they are still in draft. So he sent them as supporting document forward to look at, not necessarily to justify whatever they had there, because he said he was the person who was working on them. We have those emails and they are still in draft. That's what we have right now. We continued over into the different areas, going down into ICT, into the information part, because that was what they had working on at the point.
And those are things you have in documentation in emails from the IT director?
Yes, those are what we have in documentation.
Okay. All right, Madam AG, you have any response to that?
Right. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, I said that I was not at the entrance meeting, but I had a meeting last year, October, with the internal auditor, with Mr. Dillon, where we discussed all the issues, including the appropriation of bonds. My understanding is that from my corporate service director that constituted the exit interview.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the matter at hand is the entrance and the exit. The mere fact that Mr. Dillon or Auditor General would have made contact to discuss that matter does not form part of the entrance or the exit. My argument, sir, to both persons, or sorry, I wouldn't put it to Mr. Dillon, I want to put it directly to Madam Auditor General. How long in between the entrance and the exit meetings, how long there was? A month, 2 months? How long was the audit? Because you do...
Conducted over 8 weeks.
No, I'm asking a question, I'm not looking in the report. I'm asking a question.
Yeah, I think the audit was conducted over...
From?
8 weeks. So it commenced
Hold
in
on.
July.
Mr. Dillon, you can respond since you conducted the audit. You said it already? 8 weeks?
The audit was conducted over the period July 1, 2019 to September 20. Oh, the audit was conducted over the period July 1, 2019 to September 2019. And I'm quoting from the draft report.
So we could look at 3 months, thereabout. Was an appointment made with the Auditor General's Department for this audit to be conducted?
The appointment would take the form of an engagement letter.
And that was served?
Yes, Member.
Because the reason I'm asking these questions, Mr. Chairman, is that I heard Madam Auditor General saying that for the entrance meeting, she was not present. And for the exit meeting, she was not present. And that spans over 3 months period. I'm asking if she was on leave for those 3 months, or she had business, whether it be personal or government business, as relating to her duties as AG, why she was not present at either the entrance or the exit. So that is one question that I'm asking now.
So my officers are helping me with my memory. For the entrance meeting, no, it would have been the entrance. I would have been overseas at the Canadian Farm Work Project audit. But for the exit, I think I misspoke because I met with the internal auditors in October of 2020 to discuss the audit findings and also the circumstances surrounding the appropriation accounts. Mr. Dillon would also,
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, the question that has been asked is clear.
The exit interview, which is October. I met with the accountants. It is possible that at that point in time when they had the exit interview, I could not meet with them, but I met with them subsequently to discuss the audit findings and the status with the appropriation accounts.
All right, so what I'm hearing, the Auditor General was not present at the formal exit interview, but there was a subsequent meeting with the internal auditor and the Auditor General. It may not have been called an exit interview, but there was
Sir, Chair, it's not called an exit interview. It's not an exit interview.
And hold on. I'm just saying the Auditor
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, sir.
Hold on.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
All right, tell me the point of order.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order. As a member of the PAC, I have all respect for the chair, and I will remain respectful to the chair. But if I ask a question as a member of the PAC committee, it means that I want clarity from the person who I ask of. And Mr. Chairman, for you to be giving me your opinion as to the answer or how the mindset of the person that I ask of is not doing justice to the situation. So, Mr. Chairman, I would humbly ask that you give the person who I ask a question of enough time for them to give me an answer for me to be comfortable or be satisfied with, because I'm never going to be satisfied with your answer as it relates to your opinion of the person's answer.
And respectfully, I did not give my opinion, right? I simply repeated what was said before. I didn't give an opinion.
Mr.
Right?
Chairman, sir, you can't do that, sir.
I didn't give an opinion.
It is not your duty. It is not your duty to do that.
Well, members, I allow members to ask questions. I don't interrupt. I allow members to ask. But I also have to manage. We have time. We are. Hold on, just allow me. Allow me, please. Allow me, please. Allow me, please.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Allow me, please.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order, sir. On a point of order, sir. We are not limited to time for PAC. We have all the time for PAC. As much as we are not paid differently, but we have committee meetings that we must come to. And whilst we are here, sir, apart from the fact that we will break until another time because of the House, the chamber, need to be used for the sitting of Parliament. Sir, we have time. That is why John Public send us here. They send us here to get answers. So don't limit the time, sir, because I have a whole host of questions to ask. And what you're doing to me now is putting me in a situation that I might have to curtail, and I'm not going to do that, sir. So please, make we use the time. You're managing the time, manage it wisely by allowing the persons or the parties to answer so that we can be comfortable and we can move on to the next question, sir.
AG, go ahead.
Go ahead with what, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what I'm to.
The member asked a specific question. No, and I do not accept that. But the member, you asked the question about whether the member asked the question about whether you are at the entrance or the exit interview, and he asked what the reasons were if you were not at that meeting.
Okay, so I believe I gave the reason as to why I was not at the entrance interview. Mr. Chairman, my answer that I provide for the exit is qualified. I met with the internal auditor of October 2020. We discussed the reports. We discussed the matter with the appropriation accounts. What I'm not going to, I do not want to say something that is not so, because though my corporate service director is saying to me that that was the exit interview, I do not have it in my mind that it was the exit interview, and that is the reason why I have not said to you definitively that I was at the exit interview. But I know I had all the discussions with the internal auditor. In fact, I have had discussions even before that with the internal auditor, asking him, reminding him that if he's not getting the information that he desires, that he should, because I am not copied, and I've asked him to copy me on the emails, whatever he requires. Last week, Mr. Dillon reminded me that I did tell him that he's supposed to include me on the communication, and he had not done so, and he will ensure that he does so going forward.
Mr. Chairman, all that the Auditor General just said is sideshow to the questions that I'm asking, because I want to hear from Mr. Dillon now. Is it that the conversation that you and the Auditor General had, whether during the 3 months period or after the exit meeting, if that is constituted as the exit meeting? Is it? Yes or no?
We only have one exit meeting.
Sorry?
We only have one exit meeting, formal exit meeting.
So
one exit meeting.
So was the Auditor General there?
Was the Auditor General present at the exit meeting?
No.
That is what I want to hear, so we can go on and question further.
All right, thank you.
Hold on, Member Wilson. Member Sibley's had his hand up.
Just the Auditor General said that when she had the meeting with the Chief Internal Auditor in October, she's qualifying the exit meeting. I'm just not used to that term, and I would like the Auditor General to explain that term. It's the first I'm hearing that term. So could she explain to me what she means by qualifying the exit meeting? But before the Auditor General answer that, Chair, I have a general question that I just want to ask the Auditor General. She being the Auditor General, does it mean that all persons within that department report directly, all the senior persons report directly to her? meaning the director of IT, all the directors, because I wanted to ask you the question, before we went into the specifics of these questions, because I want an understanding of the organization structure in the department that it could inform me to ask a number of questions that I have, or to make some adjustment to some question based on my preparation coming here.
The Deputy AG's report directly to me, Mr. Chairman. The DAGs I would have introduced earlier. Among the Deputy AGs is the Director of Corporate Services. To the Director of IT reports directly to the Director of Corporate Services.
That's the second question, and I'm glad you answered that, because I now know going forward the structure, and that the IT person reports to the Director of Corporate Services, who is here, and therefore should be able to answer the questions, because that person report to him, and he would have been able to apprise himself of all the information, and he would be able to make contact to get that information. But can you move on to the second question, that term of art that you mentioned? I am not used to it, and I don't know if maybe other persons within this chamber is used to it. What do you mean by qualified exit interview?
No, I didn't say I qualify an exit interview. I said I wanted to qualify my statement. Because whereas I know that I met with the internal auditor in October of 2020 last year, I could not definitively confirm that that was the exit interview, or did we meet after, based on the fact that I was not available for the exit interview. But I know we met in October of 2020. And that's what I meant when I said I'm qualifying my statement.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I want to go back to what has taken us here, which is the draft business continuity plan. The draft plan that was sent to the Chief Internal Auditor by your IT person, and that you are first hearing about this draft today, this ICT draft business continuity plan. But there is something that you said within all of that, which is you are of the view that the scope was to look on the business continuity plan of the department, and that by way of implication, and those are my words, by way of implications, you are of the view, by sending the auditor the business continuity plan, it is the disaster recovery plan. It means that all other areas would have been okay, and it is just the ICT that the auditor is concerned about. With all due respect, Madam AG, I find that difficult to accept, because when an auditor asks a document, no one should be of the view, especially an auditor of many years, should be of the view that the auditor is looking at all the areas within the file or the document that he or she requested. And that, for an auditor to do that, or anyone to do that, that's really speculative. And all persons know that when auditors ask for a document, it doesn't mean that their scope is within the entirety of the document.
Thanks for that, Member Civils. We will respectfully disagree on that point, and I accept your position on it. My point differs. It is my view, as I said, based on what was communicated, based on discussions, even based on discussions that we had last week with Mr. Dillon with respect to the business continuity. I am aware that Mr. Dillon had a concern that there was no business continuity plan for ICT, and we responded as such. But I was not aware that Mr. Dillon did not examine any other area as it relates to the disaster preparedness. And certainly, I did not know, and the information will be presented, Mr. Chairman, because I have received, certainly, you know, there are persons watching from the office, so they have sent me the snippets of the information in terms of the approved ICT plan. So I will ensure that all that information is sent to the PAC before the end of the day.
All right, hold on. Just in terms of order, hold on. I have Member Charles, I have Member Wilson, I have Member Clark.
Just a point before you go on to other members, but I would recommend, Chair, that the Auditor General send the document to the Chief Internal Auditor. I think, respectfully, I think that should be the proper procedure for the Chief Internal Auditor to review same and to give us an update, because if I get those documents just as that, I am going to probably forced to go into a next life and do some audit. And I wish for the Chief Internal Auditor to do his work and to do the follow-up as he needs to do.
That point accepted, member. It should be sent to the internal auditor and also to the committee.
I just have something to follow up, Mr. Chairman. In the internal auditors, what is this? The Ministry of Finance. This is let me just have a look to see what is the specific, right, Chief Internal Auditor. This is his report. And I'll just read to you what it says there for scope. The internal auditor's report. Scope. The main areas of focus.
Page, please.
Page 6 of the internal auditor's report for 2019. The main areas of focus for
page
the
6.
Audit were transactions related.
I think it's page 4.
We don't have a page 6. Sir.
Page 4 in our document.
It says page 6. I have a PDF document going through.
It's page 4 on our handout.
Right. It's scope and methodology.
Page 4.
Chair.
The main areas.
Chair, point of order. Point of order, Chair.
Yeah, what's the point of order, member?
Chair, we must be assured that whatever is referenced to what we have is similar.
It's the same.
And so I don't know if the Secretary could provide the Auditor General, because the Auditor General is on page 6 of a document, and the Auditor General said it is PDF. And I want to be assured that it is the same document that we have.
Okay, so I'm reading from the report that the internal auditor would have sent to us requesting our comments. The main areas of focus for the audit were
Madam AG,
can
you hold until you get that report, because you are reading from the same document in which I am not accepting.
Okay, well, this says the same thing. It says page 4. Okay, fine. The main areas of focus for the audit were transactions relating to...
Use your mic, please.
The main areas of focus for the audit were transactions relating to payroll, salaries and traveling allowance, human resources, procurement, inventory management, expenditure control, cash and bank management, and business continuity. Mr. Chairman, I did not interpret that business continuity as being restricted to ICT. It did not say so. And as I indicated to you, it is not until the report was submitted, the initial findings that was sent.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
What's the point of order, Member Clerk?
The gentleman, Mr. Clark, that he had given us he made a presentation earlier on the premise that you gave him the permission. And I think I heard that when they questioned the members from the AG department, they were told that certain documents were not in place. And so you had to move from those specific directly into IT, right? Am I correct? Am I correct, sir?
Use the mic.
Use the mic.
That is correct.
Sorry?
I said that is correct.
That is correct. So, Mr. Chairman, and it brings me back to the question that I asked earlier, which I only got part of, and I'm still waiting on the AG to give me the answer to the second part, because she said that for the entrance, she was off doing the audit for the Canadian farm work. What caused her not to be at the exit? But not only that, no, Mr. Chairman, what she's saying to us again is that she's not aware of certain information, even though we are hearing from the internal auditors department of the ministry that this happened, but she's not aware. And so earlier my colleague used the word gap. There is a gap in between the communication. And I am now wondering, is it between the internal auditors department and the AG department, or is it a gap between the Auditor General and somebody within her department? Because obviously she is not giving us all the information that we are getting on this side.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to be misrepresented. Mr. Clark made it very clear that he spoke to the Director of IT. He did not speak to the Director of Corporate Services. Whatever communication Mr. Clark had clearly did not come up to us. What is important, I hear, and we're going to argue ad nauseum here, Mr. Chairman, because what is written is what I am going to follow. In addition to that,
as a point of order, Chair.
Hold on, members. Member Wilson, I just allow the AG to finish now.
Chair, you have to respect.
There's
a point of order.
supposed to be minutes of that exit interview.
And then you can make a point.
When an exit interview is held, there are supposed to be minutes of that exit interview. On the fact that I was not able to attend the exit interview, I requested the minutes of the exit interview. Mr. Chairman, whether I was at the exit interview or not, if I am not able to attend the exit interview, I have the authority as head of the organization to delegate that to another officer. The Director of Corporate Services was there. It does not, my absence from the exit interview in no way detracts from the responses that were provided. It in no way detracts from the information that was provided. And I asked Mr. Dillon for a copy of the exit interview, the minutes of the exit interview. It was not provided. So the fact that I was not there, well, and the truth is that, Mr.
Chairman, on a point of order, Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
Member Wilson was before you.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order.
Member Clark, Member Wilson was before you.
No, Member Wilson point of order was knocked down by you. I am asking for a point of order now.
All right, go ahead with the point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We were told not so long ago that the entrance meeting, Madam Auditor General was not on the island because she had to be in Canada for the farm work. Up to now, I still can't hear. I can't get the answer. Is it personal matters or is it government matters? Why she was not at the exit? That is what I want to continue on.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond, please? I can't be forced to provide an answer that I don't know. I did not.
Mr. Chairman,
because I am not expecting that I am going to be asked.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order against her.
Not. I will.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order against her. We're not getting anywhere.
No, just tell me the point over.
Mr. Chairman, there's no way the Auditor General, as the Auditor General for the country of Jamaica, that is telling me, a member of the PAC, an arm of the Parliament of Jamaica, that she cannot be forced?
No.
And then to tell me that she can't recall?
And you don't know what your device paperwork.
Mr. Chairman, sir.
Members, back with us, hold on. Members, AG, are you able to answer the question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I indicated that as head of the organization, I have the authority to delegate.
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order. That's not Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on a point of order. With all due respect to the lady.
The question.
With all respect to Auditor General. That is not the question that I've been asking. Yeah. And I am wondering now, sir. I am now wondering, why is it that the Madam AG is finding it so difficult to say exactly what caused her not to be? Is it personal or is it government business?
All right. Madam AG, hold on, Member Siblings. Madam AG, are you able to answer the question asked by Member Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, what I am being told here is that a letter was sent March for the exit interview. I'm advised that I was not copied on that letter. I cannot say specifically why it is I was not at the exit interview, but I know that if I was not there, there must be some substantive reason. I would have to now go back and to check to see on this specific day why I was not there. I am hastening to add, however, Mr. Chairman.
On a point of order, Mr.
Hold on.
I am asking for a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I have allowed you 3 already. I'm just saying
that. If it means that you're going to give me 4.
No. Member Clerk, I've allowed you 3. I would like the AG to just complete her response, and then you can respond. Go ahead, Madam AG.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what else to say at this point. Is there something else that I'm supposed to add to the response from Member Clark?
Mr. Chair.
I would hope so, Chair.
Let me just.
May I, Chair? May I, Chair?
No, let me just say.
We have an order, right? There are a number of members who have been waiting patiently. I acknowledge them. They indicate to me. Member Witter has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Member Witter.
Yes.
I'm coming back to you.
The AG just mentioned that she is not sure as to why she was not present at the exit meeting. And she has said that she will provide us with the reason at the next meeting. So I think we could leave it right there and wait for that.
Thank you very much, Member.
She has given us the assurance that she will provide us with that information. So we can move on.
Member Wills.
All right, thank you, Chair. This all started when I asked about the scope, and I don't want to be distracted from that particular point, because Mr. Clark, in his speech, I could put it like that, preamble, he mentioned that the scope was clearly outlined and established at the offset of the interview and during the course of the inquiry. However, that goes clearly in conflict with what the AG has been saying. She has consistently said she is fully aware of what's happening, and I quote her on that. But AG, going back to that particular point, they're saying that the information that the business continuity plan is focusing directly on ICT. You're saying that you're not aware. They can provide communication that this was sent to your office on several occasions throughout the process. So I'm trying to establish, similar to my member clerk, whether there is a breakdown within the organization of the Auditor General in terms of the management there, why you are not aware of this, because it was clearly communicated that the scope was on ICT. So that's my first question, and I have more.
So, Mr. Clark had specific responsibility for ICT. Yes? Business continuity, in my understanding, is a subject matter that would be relevant to the entire audit. He is focused on business continuity for ICT. It does not mean that the rest of the audit team would not be looking at business continuity for the other areas. He is speaking about one specific area.
Right, but he said that was communicated.
Well,
and when
I would
ask
Mr. Clark to email to me the communication where he indicated that the business continuity was restricted to IT. That's all I would ask for.
Chair, just to a point of order.
Tell me the point of order.
A point of order. The AG stated that Mr. Clark was responsible for ICT audit. Nowhere from the start of this process anyone told the PAC that information. And there is it that Mr. Dillon what was told to us is that Mr. Dillon was in charge of the audit. That was what was told to us. So for the Auditor General now to put this new bit of information on the table, I have some problem with that, and it needs to be clarified.
Well, I asked Mr. Dillon to clarify. I thought Mr. Clark had responsibility for the ICT component of the audit.
Mr. Dillon, please clarify.
All right. So let me make the point. Whenever we send a team out to execute audits, the work is issued based on particular activity, function, etc. This audit, we covered several areas, and one of them was information technology. And Mr. Clark had responsibility for that. If I may, I'd just like to make this other point too. The draft report that was sent to the department under business continuity. If I'm allowed to read a paragraph. The Auditor General's Department has a dedicated ICT function, which is staffed by a complement of 3 information technology personnel. The audit assessed the department's business continuity and disaster recovery technology plans to determine the preparedness of the information technology unit to safeguard IT assets and to support the department's recovery in the event of a disaster. As such, the audit reviewed the backup procedures employed by the department and went on to indicate that the review was carried out in keeping with the Global Technology Audit Guideline, GTAG practices, which states that a well-established and thoroughly tested disaster recovery plan must be developed in harmony with the business continuity plan, etc., etc. So in the draft report, we clearly stated that will focus on IT technology, draft report. And that's where we would have requested management response.
All right, thank you. So as a follow-up, Madam AG, in your October meeting 2020, at any point during that meeting, was it communicated that the scope of the inquiry for the business continuity plan specifically was focused on ICT?
Let me read from the very report that Mr. Dillon just read from. The summary of the significant...
Hold on. I don't want you to reread what he said.
No, I'm not rereading, but I have
just
to put it into
perspective. To be clear, because you're saying you're not aware of the scope, and they're saying the scope was clearly communicated. So it's not sitting quite well. No, it's not reconciling. So I want to find out where that gap is.
As far as I'm aware, there was no gap until this morning, because our response also stated, the report says, business continuity, the Auditor General's Department is without a business continuity plan or a continuity focus committee. It says nothing about ICT. That is on page 7 of the report. In our response, we indicated that the AUGD accepts that at the time of the audit, there was no business continuity plan in place specific to information technology. However, the department does have a disaster preparedness plan which contains its other business continuity plan.
Through the chair, Madam AG, Mr. Clark, in his preamble, going back to what he said,
yes.
He said he communicated to... He said the information system or the person who was in charge.
Yes.
He communicated that it was based on ICT.
Which is why I want my IT officer to be here, because when he's here, then you'll hear directly from him. I do not want to quote what he has said, but I do believe that there is a misunderstanding between both.
All right, so next week we will pick up on this particular question, because the scope is important. Because if the scope isn't communicated to the AG's department, it would have meant that she's suffering from an unfair assessment of her department. And I want to be clear that she is fully aware and her department is fully aware of the scope before we continue. So I think next week, through your chair, we can interrogate that particular...
I'd just like to respond to the point about the unfair assessment, because I would not want it to be said that I'm of the view that there's an unfair assessment.
No. I am saying auditor, that. Those are my words, Ms.
Right,
AG.
because the auditor spoke specifically to ICT.
Yes, and I want to ensure that we have clarity, because at this moment there is none, as you can clearly see from the response of my colleagues. The final question that I have for today, because we're out of time, Mr. Dillon and his team did communicate that after receiving the draft business continuity plan, they communicated to your department that this is a draft plan. So are you saying you're not seeing any of the communication that a draft was sent? Because they said specifically on the record that they communicated to you guys.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Mr. Dillon to submit all of that information to me. What Mr. Dillon wrote to me did not include any such thing that he has received a draft plan. So I would like for him to send the emails and any other method of communication that he used to communicate that he had received a draft plan. And I will also submit the approved plans as well.
Right, but in your October 2020 meeting, was it at any point communicated to you that a draft business continuity or disaster?
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not.
All right, thank you.
All right, members, we are at 2 minutes past 1, and we're going to have to adjourn the meeting. The House has to be prepared for Parliament for 2 o'clock. We obviously are coming back next week to continue the deliberations. There are some documents that the Auditor General will send to the internal auditor and also to the committee, which we expect the internal auditor to provide us with a view on by the time we come back next week, Tuesday, Mr. Dillon. And we will continue. We have just substantively dealt with the first item under business continuity. We'll continue with the report when we continue.
We don't finish with business continuity. We'll continue next week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We will continue with business continuity when we resume next week. Can I have a motion for the adjournment? Member Charles, seconded by Member Wilson. Thank you, members. We'll continue next week, Tuesday at 10 o'clock.